Yeah, it drove the producers nuts on the show because they'd be like, okay, talk about this. And I'd go into this huge long spiel and they'd be like, okay, now say it in one sentence.
Can you shorten that up?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Milwaukee and then I moved out to Delafield, which is just between Madison and Milwaukee. So, and that's where I spent most of my time as a child.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I've got 2 brothers, and we moved out there when I was like in 3rd grade. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And are your brothers artists or
No,
anything?
not at all. I mean, I think that they have the potential to be, but they don't. I've tried to enlist their help for things, and then it just never works out. So.
And when we talked before, you talked about you grew up in a conservative home, and I
Yeah.
agree with you. That was kind of the way I grew up as well.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your childhood and your earliest memory of wanting to create something with your hands, or when you decided?
Well, I mean, my father has artistic leanings, I guess would be a way to put it. And he always encouraged me to draw and stuff like that. So I've been drawing for as long as I can remember. I don't ever remember a time where I wasn't drawing. As far as special effects go, the making of the Michael Jackson Thriller video was kind of life-changing for me. I remember when I was a kid, that video came out, and I remember sitting in my parents' rocking chair and just watching the making of the thing over and over and over again. So that had a really strong impact on me, I think.
Okay. And tell me about your very first creation that you made.
What kind of, like, art creation? Or?
Yeah, you said you drew.
I just remember drawing pictures of my cat a lot. We had a cat named Dumbo, who was actually quite smart. And I'd always draw Dumbo and give him to my dad. He still got one framed in his office.
Stuck it on there.
Yeah.
And then what about making something with your hands?
Well, it's funny because like when I went to school, for art at UW-Madison, I mostly focused on painting and photography. And it wasn't until after I graduated from graduate school at UW-Milwaukee that I started sculpting. So I've only been really sculpting for like the past 3 years or so. It's pretty recent. I mean, I remember fiddling around with it like in high school, and like, you had to take ceramics and, you get on the wheel and then you make a cup, but it turns into a plate and then it just is everywhere. So I didn't really do well with clay in school. But it wasn't until after grad school that I started.
And was it, you just went to the store and said, I'm going to buy a chunk of clay and start making something?
Pretty much, like there was a couple little pieces that I made for props for costuming, and then I would sculpt it and mold it and cast it. And the first large-scale piece I made was a cat mask for my Khajiit character from the Elder Scrolls game. So that was resin, but that was my first large-scale sculpt.
So looking at that from what you're doing today,
huge leaps. Yeah, I mean, I still have the cat mask hanging up in my studio, and I still like it, but it's like I would approach it very differently now.
Right, and is that because you learned different fundamentals? I mean, did somebody say, this is how you can tweak this, or did you just say,
Well, I think when it comes to sculpting, I've been mostly self-taught. So for me, I always think that, and this is from teaching art, like, I taught drawing 1 in college, and I'd always tell students that art isn't about drawing, it's about seeing and understanding what you're seeing. And so for me, it was just learning anatomy from looking at it and how I could improve it, looking at other people's sculptures and their techniques and seeing like that kind of breakdown and how they use that and adapting it to my own work.
So it's fun to be self-taught because you just kind of learn what works best for you, not necessarily.
Well, I think the cool thing about being self-taught, and I feel like this is a thing that's really prevalent in the cosplay community too, is that you come up with innovative techniques for things. That sometimes you go about it, like you can read tutorials, and you can learn like these cool things and stuff like that. But if you're self-taught, sometimes you look at it from a different perspective, and instead of going about it in a way you were taught, you go about it in a unique way that can lead to better techniques and more innovative techniques. And also horrible techniques that you have to correct down the line. So you got to be careful about that.
So you learn what not to do.
Oh, too. Yeah, totally.
And you mentioned Michael Jackson's video. What other things influenced you to really go in this direction?
Ooh, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I mean, I've always been interested in it. I've always been interested in the idea of changing your appearance to suit a role, which is funny because I actually don't like really wearing prosthetics or masks or anything, but I make them obsessively. But I think that that's always been of interest to me.
So when you say change your appearance, is that just for masks? Because, you color your hair, you have tattoos. Does it go farther than that with you?
Well, I suppose if we're being really introspective, maybe. But I don't really think of it that way, I guess.
Okay.
It's just, the tattoos are just, I like to decorate myself with my experiences. And yeah.
Let's talk about your schooling. And,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned you had some degrees. And what drove you to say, I want to keep further my degree versus just, I just want to go sculpt and
That's a tough one. I graduated from Madison in 2001, and then I took about 3 years off, and I worked with a whole bunch of other artists in an art supply store in Evanston, Illinois, and still very good friends with a lot of them because they're all still working artists and everything. And I think that was a very profound experience for me because it really just taught me how people can work with the arts in different ways. And I decided that I wanted to teach at the university, so in order to do that you needed an MFA. So I ended up getting in at UW Milwaukee, and that's where I continued my graduate studies.
So talk about the teaching then, the teaching part of it.
I really love teaching. I taught at UWM for 2 years. I taught drawing 1, and I also taught kickboxing.
Wow.
Yeah, and really enjoyed the teaching, but working within the university system is difficult sometimes, and it ended up just not working out for me. So I would like to go back to teaching at some point, but I'm trying to find the right system to work within.
And your kickboxing side.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I love watching MMA.
Yeah.
But I don't know, are there degrees to kickboxing?
Well, at the time when I started teaching kickboxing, I was in karate. And my karate sensei was having me teach some of the lower level classes and work with people that needed maybe a gentler touch, I guess you could say. Like I often got paired up with pregnant women because I had really good control. And after that, he's like, you're really good at this. So he hooked me up with the sport and rec department at UW Milwaukee. And he's like, she'd be a great kickboxing teacher. And I worked with them to come up with a curriculum. And
Oh, wow, you had to develop the curriculum.
yeah. And so, I really enjoyed it, honestly. It was like 8-week sessions. So there was 4 sessions during the school year. And it was just amazing to see somebody come from being like really shy and like, like they don't know what they're doing to like just being able to wallop through somebody. So it was.
Well, yeah, from a teacher's perspective, that's
it's so gratifying, yeah. And like I'd have people come over and take all the classes again. So there's not really any like belt training or anything in the kickboxing I taught. It was supposed to be like a cardio class, but I always taught like self-defense, and I tried to adapt the curriculum to what the individuals wanted. Like I had one guy who was going up for an MMA. He wanted to fight MMA, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not an MMA fighter, but here's what I know. And I gave him everything I knew, and like asked around with my karate people, like, what do you recommend for? So I'd always try to give them the best information I could.
Yeah, because an MMA fighter, you have to be so well-rounded. I mean,
Yeah.
You're using every part of
I'm
your
like,
body.
well, I told him, I'm like, you got to take like judo or jujitsu, anything with a floor game, because I know for me personally, when I get pinned, like it's kind of over. My floor game is terrible.
Well, as a kickboxer, you're used to standing up.
Yeah. I mean, I have some like moves that I can use, but like it's not that good.
Sure. What is that, if I'm watching this and I saw you on Face Off, but I don't know if I'm a local person, how I can...
Okay, Feral Works is my company. I mostly sell things through Etsy, but I'm going to hopefully move soon to my own store. But yeah, I work with people mostly online, but I'm happy to meet with people in person to create items that they want. So a lot of stuff that I make tends to be geared towards cosplay, but I also do items that I just think are cool, and people ask me to customize them for their taste. So there's a lot of back and forth with my clients, and yeah, I mean, I like working with people to help them realize their vision. Again, I have the Etsy store. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, all that jazz is Feral Works. So.
Okay, so it's all Feral Works?
It's all Feral Works.
And where's Melissa Ebbe 20 years from now?
Lounging on my jet.
It's cool.
What I would really like to do is, I want to keep working as an artist, but I think what I'd really like to do is get into concept art. I think that my strong point, and what I enjoy personally, is creating characters and backstories and stuff like that. And so I think it's great to have an understanding of how a makeup applies to an actor, to understand like how you can mesh one thing into the other to create an even better character. So I think I've got the groundwork to be a good concept artist. So I really hope that I can break into that field, doing sculpting like maquettes, just taking ideas from the director and running with it and creating creatures based on their vision.